Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to offering news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. Catholics continue to increase in the world, thanks especially to Africa, although they are decreasing in both Europe and America. About 500 adults will come into the Catholic Church in England this year, during the Easter celebrations. The German bishops have decided to reform the moral teachings on sexuality on their own, without considering any indication from the Vatican. Cardinal Pell, who is already in jail, has received a sentence for the charge of sexual abuse, 6 years in prison. However, the conviction has been appealed. The headquarters of the Episcopal Conference in Costa Rica has been raided by the police, in search of documents concerning a priest accused of pedophilia. While Islam spreads throughout Europe, the number of Catholics is decreasing on the old continent. The same is happening in America. On the other hand, global figures are positive.
The figures revealed by the Statistical Yearbook of the Catholic Church with regard to the year 2015 indicate that 1.3 billion people in the world are Catholic, which represents 17.7% of the world's population. In addition, they show that the number of the baptized is 12.5 million more than the previous year, 2014.
1 billion people live in Africa, of which 19.42% are Catholic, which is about 222 million people, with a 0.12% increase since last year. In the Americas, of the 982.2 million inhabitants, 63.6% or 625 million are Catholic, with a 0.08% decrease in that number. In Asia, of the more than 4.3 billion people, Catholics represent only 3.24% of the population, which is about 141 million people. This figure was maintained as stable.
In Europe, the population has grown, 716 million. But for the second consecutive year, the number of Catholics has decreased and is now 39.87%, or 285 million, with a 0.21% decrease. 38.7 million people live in Oceania, 26.36% Catholics, or 10.2 million, with a 0.24% increase compared to the previous year.
The Catholic Church operates 216,548 educational centers, frequented by more than 60 million students. Almost 5.5 million young people frequent Catholic universities. Lastly, there are 118,000 Catholic charitable institutions, which include hospitals, leper colonies, orphanages, and homes for the elderly, and these are spread throughout the world.
Despite the serious crisis the Church suffers, the Catholic faith continues to attract souls living outside of it. This is evident in England.
More than 500 people participated in the rite of election in the Westminster Cathedral in England last weekend. This rite is the step prior to their final reception into the Church, which will occur during the Easter Vigil.
Some dioceses have reported an increase of converts in comparison with previous years. Nottingham had 30 participants more than last year, preparing for the reception into the church at Easter. Birmingham had 8. Other dioceses, however, had fewer. There were fewer converts both in Cardiff and in Middlesbrough. Westminster also had a decline, although the number was higher than it was in 2017.
For those who follow the rite of Christian initiation of adults, the rite of election is among the final stages of preparation for the reception of baptism and confirmation. Traditionally held at the beginning of Lent for those who will be received during the Easter Vigil, it provides an approximate guide to the number of converts, although the total tends to be higher since participation is optional.
The German bishops have announced that they are going to study changes of the sexual morality of the Church without consulting the Vatican for approval.
Cardinal Marx, president of the German Bishops' Conference, has stated that the Catholic Church in Germany is open to revising Catholic moral teaching on sexuality, which prohibits contraception, cohabitation outside of marriage, and homosexual relations.
During the plenary assembly held in Lingen, the German Episcopal Conference addressed the possible causes and reasons for the current sex abuse crisis in their country. The guest speakers proposed the idea of ordaining married men, as well as accepting contraception, sexual relations before marriage, homosexual relations, and gender ideology.
Cardinal Marx said that most of the bishops thought that there is a need for change in sexual morality. He indicated that in 1970, the German bishops had already sent a set of questions to Rome, but they did not receive a response. At that time, certain things could still not be discussed openly, he added, because one might have problems with Rome. But, he concluded, that time is over.
Cardinal Pell has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for 5 pedophilia offenses against 2 minors. The cardinal must serve a minimum of 3 years and 8 months in order to be eligible for probation.
The judge said that he took a number of factors into account, including the cardinal's age, state of health, the possibility of recidivism, and his conduct in recent years. He was facing 10 years in prison for each of the charges.
The period of imprisonment which I am imposing carries the possibility that you may not live to be released, the judge indicated.
The cardinal has maintained his innocence at all times. His lawyers appealed the sentence, and the appeal hearing will take place during the first week of June. A good number of jurists have pointed out the lack of consistency of the evidence against the cardinal.
Without prior notice and without first requesting cooperation, the police raided the headquarters of the Episcopal Conference in Costa Rica, searching for material on a priest accused of pedophilia.
The bishops of Costa Rica disagree over the way the search happened, so they issued a statement saying that neither the prosecutor's office nor the courts of law have requested any information from church authorities or the Metropolitan Curia or the Episcopal Conference until what unfortunately happened today.
They also mentioned that the judge proceeded with the search warrant because of false information, because it was considered that church officials refused to give her a copy of the complaint filed with the Metropolitan Curia in the year 2015, even though the complainant, as well as the witnesses, received a copy on the day that the complaint was filed.
The day of the raid, 20 agents of the Judicial Investigation Department showed up, armed with ski masks and equipment to knock down doors and break into files, locking the workers in a room. They were isolated and threatened.
Despite the fact that 2 of the ecclesiastical tribunal officials gave them the documentation requested, they continued with the search on the 3 levels of the building, looking in every file and causing destruction to the property.
In addition, the judicial officials did not allow the detainees to recite the rosary, playing music at high volume, and subsequently moved them to another room. They were detained for over 3 hours, to then be evacuated from the building and sent home. The Episcopal Conference's lawyer was not allowed access to witness the legal action.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to commenting on the figure of St. Joseph and his confidence in God as a model for the current time the Church is living through.
Esta semana se ha conocido un estudio sociológico, parece que serio, sobre la Iglesia en Estados Unidos, según el cual al menos 1/3 de los católicos norteamericanos está pensando apostatar, está pensando dejar la Iglesia. Por supuesto, es un caso particular debido a la influencia que ha tenido en esa comunidad los escándalos de pederastia de los sacerdotes y la forma en que han intentado resolverlos, afrontarlos los obispos, la jerarquía norteamericana y también la jerarquía vaticana. Yo creo que en un momento como este, donde la situación realmente es difícil, conviene dirigir nuestra mirada a aquel que la propia Iglesia declaró como su patrono. Me refiero a San José. Fue el Papa Pío IX el que en 1870 lo proclamó como patrono de la Iglesia universal. En una homilía memorable durante su visita a Filipinas en el año 2015, el Papa Francisco se refirió también a ese patronazgo de San José y le puso como ejemplo de varias cosas. Entre otras, señaló el Papa Francisco que Dios le habló a San José en 2 ocasiones, según cuenta la Biblia, mientras dormía. Y el Papa invitaba a dormir en el Señor. No a dormir sin hacer nada, sino a descansar en el Señor. Creo que cuando la situación se vuelve tan difícil como la que estamos viviendo, cuando realmente nos parece que no hay futuro, cuando nuestros enemigos se muestran como más poderosos y más listos que nosotros, cuando no hay esperanza humana, es en estos momentos en los cuales tenemos que descansar en el Señor, tenemos que confiar en Dios, tenemos que abandonarnos en el Señor. En el 2017, el funeral por su amigo el cardenal Meissner, el Papa Benedicto XVI mandó un mensaje que causó mucho revuelo en ese momento. Dijo el Papa, elogiaba el Papa Benedicto a su amigo difunto, diciendo que era, no hay que olvidarlo, fue uno de los firmantes de los Dubia, diciendo que en los últimos tiempos había aprendido a confiar en Dios, a abandonarse en el Señor a pesar de lo turbulento del presente. Incluso, dice el Papa Benedicto en ese mensaje para el funeral de su amigo, dice que aunque la Iglesia está a punto de volcar. No dice que aunque la Iglesia estuviera a punto o pareciera que está a punto de volcar, sino que lo da como un presente. La Iglesia está a punto de volcar. Esas son las palabras, repito, del Papa Benedicto en el funeral o para el funeral de su amigo el cardenal Meissner. La Iglesia está a punto de volcar, pero no ha volcado todavía. Está a punto, pero no ha volcado todavía. Y por eso yo creo que en este momento lo que tenemos que hacer, fijándonos en lo que el Papa Francisco ha dicho de San José, lo que tenemos que hacer es descansar en el Señor. También en una memorable entrevista que le hicieron nada menos que en el año 1969 al entonces profesor Ratzinger, en lo que se conoce como la profecía de Ratzinger, él entonces, y ha llovido mucho desde ese momento, hablaba de que la iglesia del futuro será una iglesia minoritaria, una iglesia que habrá perdido casi todos sus privilegios. Decía, una iglesia que no podrá llenar sus hermosos y antiguos templos, pero también una iglesia más libre, también una iglesia donde la gente está en ella porque quiere estarlo y donde se vive muchísimo más intensamente la comunión con el Señor. Una iglesia de santos, decía el profesor Ratzinger, después cardenal y después pontífice. Creo que, vuelvo a repetir, estamos en un momento difícil. No podemos, es imposible que nos dejemos engañar por los que están hablando continuamente de los brotes verdes, de la primavera eclesial que ellos ven como fruto de ese rendimiento al espíritu del mundo. Bueno, seguramente somos tontos, pero no tan tontos como ellos piensan que somos. Los brotes verdes no están por ninguna parte. Lo que hay es que 1/3 de los católicos norteamericanos está pensando apostatar y que este no es un caso único, aunque sea un caso especial dentro de la Iglesia. No hay brotes verdes. Pero lo que sí que tiene que haber es esperanza, confianza en Dios, abandono en Dios. Es decir, poner todo lo que tenemos, todo lo que somos al servicio de Cristo y de la Iglesia, también nuestra poca santidad, y abandonarnos en el Señor. Trabajar intensamente con todo lo que somos, con todo lo que tenemos, por amor a Cristo, por amor a la Iglesia, y abandonarnos en el Señor y confiar en Dios. Creo que esto es lo que San José nos enseña para hoy, el ejemplo que nos enseña para hoy que tenemos que aplicar. Y también, por supuesto, pedirle a San José, rezarle a San José, no solo para que proteja a la Iglesia, sino para que de una forma especial proteja a los futuros sacerdotes, a los seminaristas y proteja también a los que ya somos sacerdotes. Confiar en Dios como hizo San José, esto es lo que tenemos que hacer en este difícil y tormentoso momento presente. Hasta la semana que viene, si Dios quiere.
If you want to stay up to date with what is happening in the Catholic Church, you can do so online on our site www.catholicosonline.org. Until next time, God willing.